is Reclaim Your Emotional Equilibrium. Today, we are privileged to have Patricia Warby with us. Patricia is a trauma therapist, a somatic therapist, and she is an expert in the field of how to recover from old trauma that is stored in one's body from a long time ago and that keeps having its effect on one, even if one has forgotten about it and is not even conscious about it anymore. I was very privileged to have a course of therapy sessions with Patricia last year, and it helped me tremendously. And that's why I wanted to share it with my colleagues. Patricia, it was online because Patricia is in the UK and I'm in South Africa. But over a course of 10 private sessions, Patricia helped me to release a lot of trauma that I have been carrying since my early childhood and also later years. And I wasn't consciously thinking about it all the time, but it was there. And the results for me, having experienced that therapy with Patricia, were life-changing. Everything about me changed. My whole energy, my enthusiasm for life, and also my sense of inner peace. And so I really would like to share that with my colleagues. We live in a very traumatizing world, in the world of litigation and law. In fact, aggression is a technique that is used by many of our colleagues in order to intimidate us and in order for them to win our cases and make us cower in fear and give up on fighting for our clients. And I find to this day, and I've been in practice for about 33 years, to this day, if someone employs those terror tactics, I get triggered. I feel scared. I want to make everything stop and just go away. And of course, you know, we can't do that to our clients, and it would be wrong to do that. But I have found that the things that Patricia has taught me and the trauma release experiences I've had while in therapy with Patricia has helped me in a situation like that to stay present in the moment, feel that fear, but to also kind of take a step back and see, okay, this person is trying to intimidate me. I am being triggered, but I can actually remain here, present mentally, you know, and work strategically on my case. And that has really helped me very, very much. And I think that possibly there are other advocates and attorneys who could also benefit from what I have received from Patricia. So, Patricia, could you please tell us what are emotions?
Well, first of all, thank you very much for inviting me, and it's so wonderful to be here and to be able to give maybe an unusual view of what emotions are and why so many people think they can ignore them. So, emotions are not just feelings, they don't just arise in the brain. Okay, they are an energetic signature that sometimes lives in parts of your body, particularly from past experiences from the early years of your life, before your brain was fully functional and fully integrated. You have what's called the limbic brain, and that downloads information almost like a sponge without really conscious awareness or conscious processing. And so experiences you had then are often memorized as an emotional memory and stored in parts of your brain which have no, as you said, conscious recollection, if you like. You may not know exactly what it was that caused this emotion in you, but it can often live on silently as a sensation perhaps that you're not aware of until such time as you get triggered in your daily life. And that can be an event that maybe mimics some sensory aspect of the original trauma, the original event that overwhelmed you. Okay, so it could be the time of year, it could be the expression on someone's face, It could be their gender. You know, if you grew up with a difficult mother or father and you're dealing with a man or a woman that looks very like them, these triggers and their responses are completely unconscious. And so there's no logic to this, and it doesn't respond to willpower. So emotions are really important. Everybody has them. It's just they may not be consciously aware of them. And so what happens is they bury themselves in the body as a kind of repressed energy, waiting to trip you up, as many of us find out when we go into, you know, very traumatic professions. You know, I was in health research, which shouldn't be traumatic, but it's very cut and thrust. It's very academic. Colleagues are vying with each other. There's lots of pressure to perform, and I'm sure as a lawyer you feel the same. You know, that performance anxiety, that sense of I've got to win my case, or I've got to do the best I can here. And so the triggers are everywhere, and they can really affect you.
A lot of us deal with clients who are themselves traumatized. I've done quite a lot of family law cases, especially when there are children involved. That I find emotionally very difficult, and also personal injury matters where like my clients have suffered severe physical trauma and brain damage, and their whole family is really traumatized. And I have felt that this has rubbed off on me.
Yes.
So when you talk about trauma, what are we talking about?
Okay, so trauma is a relatively recent word if we look at the history of psychology, and it's very misunderstood. It tends to be thought of as things that are major life events, like being in an accident, or being held hostage, or something that's really severe and life-threatening. But trauma, the real definition of trauma, is anything that overwhelms your nervous system's capacity. All right, that anything that tips you into overwhelm, and your nervous system cannot manage to rebalance you. Okay, and that gets stored in your emotional brain as an implicit memory of that event in order to avoid it in future. But of course, there are some things we simply can't avoid. We can't avoid relationship breakdowns, or having difficult conversations with people in power over us. You know, there are so many aspects of modern life where we are going to be under some kind of threat response, and that's going to trigger old trauma that, as I've said, is sitting in you from experiences that you've had, or traumas that you've observed, because that's another really important point from what you were just saying.
Yes.
There is such a thing as vicarious or borrowed trauma, and that's usually where you are witnessing someone who is going through something completely overwhelming, and your mind is associating with them as if it was happening to you. And so that can be really disempowering. It can really send you into a tailspin, and you're not sure how to recover your equilibrium.
In the legal profession all over the world, lawyers are particularly high up in the list of people who use alcohol and other substances, who suffer from depression and anxiety, even suicide, and who have problems at home in their families. So, you know, just looking at that, what would you say that tells us about what happens in lawyers' careers?
So what's really interesting is that you tend to be drawn to what you are familiar with. And that works in relationships, but it also works in your choice of career. All right. So if you grew up in a family in which you were always having to prove yourself, or there was a lot of drama, or perhaps, you know, you had a very dominant parent and you needed to kind of assert your superiority in some way, and you know, go on into some profession that would give you a sense of pride, and particularly one where you get to mete out justice, if you like. You get to really live your values. And one of the strongest values I've found with the people I work with is a sense of right or wrong. You know, the sense of injustice will drive you to look to those kinds of professions. And so we tend to be particularly emotionally sensitive people, bizarrely, tend to be drawn to quite traumatizing professions, because we've shut it down to a certain extent, and we've said, no, I'm not affected by it. But your physiology tells the real story. Your body is still affected, even if you feel like nothing has happened. You know, your heart rate will change, your digestion will be affected, your sleep, sometimes your energy levels. There's so much that can happen, but it is really, really strange. But we tend to be attracted to the very thing that we experienced growing up.
It's so interesting, and it explains a lot.
Yeah,
so
it does.
If we manage to distract ourselves from our old trauma that is stuck in us, let's say we manage to do it, by using substances or alcohol, or by overworking, so that we're not conscious of it, does that reduce the impact of that trauma on our bodies and minds?
Well, initially, yes. All right. That the strategies that you adopt, whether that's alcohol, drugs, overwork, internet scrolling, whatever the strategy is to distract yourself from what's actually happening in your body, works for a certain while. And for me, it worked until about my mid-30s. And then it spectacularly collapsed. And my overworking, kind of overgiving nature was suddenly hijacked from within, where my cellular energy systems just said no more. My brain was saying, keep going, keep going, keep going, but my body was saying, that's it. We've had enough. You're out of this. And it affected my physical health massively. And I also became very highly anxious. I mean, I've been quite highly attuned before that. I've always been a very highly attuned person, but I got very, very anxious suddenly. And, to the point where I really could hardly go out the house.
Yes.
I really had to steel myself to go and be in public. That's a classic sign.
So the symptoms actually are progressive. Initially, one can distract oneself, but eventually those distractions stop working.
They stop working, and I believe that is because there's a subtle change in the brain as you age, and your ability to dissociate from your lived experience is it's very high when you're young, but it becomes less so as you age, and you can't kind of so easily block out the signals, and they start to impinge, and they start usually as low-grade symptoms. For me, it was an insomnia. I just found it difficult to stay asleep. I would wake very early. Then I stopped being able to sleep altogether. And that was horrible. And then obviously digestive symptoms and other things creep in. And we see it more and more in the everyday world. I'm seeing much more anxiety, much more fatigue. Chronic pain is another example of the way the body will scream at you from what emotionally is going on that has been pushed down. So it's extreme. Yeah.
So, Patricia, was it your own experience of what you've been describing that led you into the field of trauma therapy?
It was, because obviously, as I said, I was in a kind of high achieving field. I'll be really honest with you. I had what I thought was a nervous breakdown when I was 33, and nobody told me that it might be related to trauma. It was given the label anxiety, and I was put on multiple medications. It actually wasn't until I started to try and heal myself, and I got involved in body work, and I learned massage therapy and Reiki. But I actually had a client come to me for a massage, and I was 6 months into my practice. I'd only just qualified, and she lay down on the table, and I just placed my hands very gently on the back of her neck and on the sacrum, which is how you kind of ground the person before you begin. And then what happened after that was so extraordinary. It kind of changed my life, because her body shot up. She took herself off the table and started to choke, and her nose started spontaneously bleeding. And nothing had prepared me for that. And in massage training school, they teach you that if someone feels faint, you put them in recovery and, talk to them nicely. This was something so odd and strange, and I really didn't know what was going on. But I had the presence to put my hands on her shoulders and say, you're here, and you're safe, and it's okay. And I don't know where those words came from, because I had no prior experience. I just somehow intuited that she wasn't present in the room. She was somewhere else. And from that day, I learned that she had been triggered by a simple touch on the back of the neck that took her back to being a 3-year-old child. And something that she had experienced, which was so overwhelming, that she had blocked that out for 45 years. And she'd come to me because she was sort of aware that something was bubbling up.
Yes.
But she had no idea what it was, and that revealed it to her completely. And she suddenly had a very clear memory of exactly what had happened. And that is what catapulted me into learning about trauma. And it was a very unexpected diversion. And then when I started to learn, I realized I had had trauma too, not in the extreme version like she had had. I had a very ordinary, fairly normal background, but I'd had a seriously ill father and a mother who was highly anxious, probably because of that, but also she was quite highly strung herself. And then he died when I was still a teenager. And I'd never really thought that would have anything to do with my anxiety or depression. And now I look back and I think, how did I not think that could have a consequence later on, with everything I now know? But at the time, I hadn't made those links.
Yes.
And so that was my wake-up call, really.
So with the clients you've worked with, I know this, everyone is different, but as a general statement, how do things change for them when they work with you and start to release that old unconscious trauma?
Well, they start to, first of all, come into their bodies, because that's how I promote this work. I don't do talk therapy. We don't just talk about what happened, and it's not cognitive. So the first thing that happens is they become aware of how dissociated they are and how much they have repressed. But in terms of what they're able to release, it's a very gentle process, as you yourself know. And a lot of people are terrified to do this work because they think they're going to start howling or having terrible, awful experiences. And actually, the body is just there to teach you. Are you frozen again?
Yeah, I'm sorry. It's
that's okay.
The unpredictable nature of the internet and the Wi-Fi.
It is, yeah.
Okay.
So they start to release things, and as they do that, the body starts to restore its autonomic balance. Okay, and what that means is you start to lose the symptoms that you've been gradually accumulating over your lifetime, and you lose your reactivity to triggers. And so things that would have maybe caused you a difficult night's sleep, or you might have found that your heart was racing, loses its impact. And so you're free. You are free to experience life without being triggered and without all these endless symptoms, which tend to get worse with time. They don't tend to disappear. They tend to ratchet up as you get older. And so It's a very gentle but cathartic process of release and I have to say, at the end of the day, it's living your truth. It's finding out who you really are to be in this world, rather than the pretense or the mask, as I call it, that you've put on to show the world, you know, what you think you are. Right? Because I thought I was super competent,
Yes,
invulnerable. You know, I would have said mental ill health was a weakness, and I felt very
yes,
sorry for people who had mental ill health, but I never thought it would happen to me. And so it changes your worldview, and it really just, it makes life a whole lot easier.
No,
And
I can relate to that. For those who came late, I've participated in a course of therapy sessions with Patricia last year online, to help me to release old traumas that I was largely unaware of. And it really did, it was life-changing. I feel a lot more free, my energy is better, my mood is better. And so you know, what Patricia is describing is something that I have experienced, and I continue to experience the benefits of that. So Patricia, before I ask you to give us a demonstration, because this webinar is also how to.
Yeah.
Could you explain, in layman's terms, the neuroscientific basis of the somatic therapy that you do?
Okay, yeah. So underneath your cortex, in the middle of your brain, is a series of connected limbic structures which register both sensory experience and emotional experience, and that's your limbic system. And these convey information to and from your body via your vagus nerve. And your vagus nerve is one of the most important nerves in your body. It's part of your parasympathetic system, which is your rest and digest, your calming system. And the opposite to that is your fight and flight sympathetic system. And that's the one that you kind of rev up if you've got like a big case coming up and you're like, oh, I've got to get going. That's the kind of the one that's going to speed your heart rate, send blood to your muscles, make your eyesight and hearing more acute. But what we do find with people is that a lot of them are in sympathetic dominance. So they're in sympathetic state most of the time, which is certainly true for me. And so the vagus nerve becomes almost, it loses its tone, it loses its ability to balance that autonomic arousal. And the limbic structures, as they start to detect patterns in your life, will get fired more and more easily. And in particular,
so could I just stop you there?
Yeah.
What is the subjective experience of being in that state? How does one feel?
Wired all the time. All right. But you may not even have a conscious understanding of that because it's the way you've always been, if you're anything like me. It's only when other people interact with you and say, you know, you seem anxious or you seem, you know, quite highly strung. I mean, I had a doctor say to me during my breakdown, you know, have you always been this anxious? And I remember saying, I'm not anxious, but that's because I grew up around anxiety. And so I didn't know any different. But what you physiologically feel like is ready for action the whole time. You know, I can do this, I can do this. But you never truly know how to switch off. And the only times that ever happened for me was after anesthetic, which is so weird. But I would just feel, wow, you know, this is amazing. So the subjective experience is different for everyone. I don't want to make it sound like everybody feels it the same way, but you will often you'll have low-grade issues with your immune system, your digestive system. You'll feel like you never quite switch off. And that's a problem for your body long term because you need your rest and digest system to repair, particularly during sleep, you know.
Yes.
And if your sleep is disrupted, you're not repairing, you're not actually repairing in your brain. So there's a huge link between stress and dementia, for instance. So
because your brain is just tired. It never gets a chance to be refreshed.
It also never gets a chance to drain, because what we've realized is that the brain has a lymphatic system called the glymphatics, and overnight your brain shrinks a little bit, and as it does that, you can drain away all the debris, metabolic debris of the day, and that keeps your brain fresh, quite literally. But if you're not sleeping properly, that process doesn't happen. And then, so you get foggy brain in the morning, you get very difficulty remembering things after a while. And you just don't feel right. And there are so many things that can happen to people that affect them. So as I've said, you can get chronic pain for no reason.
Yes.
That you can get a back pain that suddenly your back goes out and you were just reaching for the toothbrush. I've had somebody tell me that, I was just reaching for the toothbrush and my back went.
Yes.
You're carrying chronic stress in your muscles of your back, and it's not until something tips you over that you realize, that's what I've been carrying all these years, and I didn't know.
I think I and my colleagues who are watching can all relate to this awful experience. You've been in trial in court the whole day and totally switched on and dealing with everything, and then I'll speak for myself. I get home and I'm exhausted and I go to bed early, and then my brain says, okay, let's prepare the cross-examination. What if he says that? What if he says that? What did he mean? And of course, one does have to think about those things, but I really can relate to what you say about not being able to switch off. And I find that I can stay fresh and clear for about 3 days, consecutive days in a trial.
Right.
But by the 4th day, that sleep deprivation is starting to make me more irritable, which is really never goes down well if you're irritable with your opponent or your client. True. And especially with the judge. They don't appreciate that. And also just not being quite as sharp. Forgetting where a certain document is, or forgetting what the witness said yesterday afternoon. And so being wired like that all the time, to me, actually makes me worse at my job. So I have found that the things that I've learned from you about regaining my emotional equilibrium and about emotionally debriefing, I believe they have helped me to become more present, mentally and emotionally, in court. And also there's a lot of subtle things where you read the room, you read what the judge is thinking, and one's got to be alert but relaxed.
Yes, that's beautifully put, actually. So what you want is a flow state, which is that your nervous system is adjusting gently up and down. What you don't want is it up all the time or crash down. And so it's the balance between these two systems that's really key. I mean, I'm not going to go into the depth of the vagal theory, polyvagal theory here, but basically you've got two systems. The other thing you mentioned, which is a tendency for rumination, I think that's worth mentioning, all right? Because what happens when you get these signals, unconscious signals, remember, they're not always conscious, gut tightening, or maybe your chest feels tight, is that your brain, which is connected, remember, via the vagus nerve, has to interpret that, and it will come up with all sorts of reasons why you feel the way you do. And usually it will try and problem solve. So the reason I'm feeling anxious is because the judge said this, or my client, oops, I forgot to cross-examine on this one, But actually the signals are coming from deep in your body, and as I've said, they can be memories of past experiences that you have never metabolized. And so it's not just what's going on now, and it kind of has a cumulative effect. And so it creates this huge pressure to kind of overthink. And you're constantly worrying about what you've said or what you should be saying. And so that just adds to this anxiety loop that's been going on. So this hypervigilance, ready for anything, and the rumination are really key factors. So,
and when it's, you know, that adrenaline is flowing initially.
yes.
Hi, Renette, can you just switch off your camera? Thank you. One feels so powerful, you know. Now on the first and the second day of the trial, I think, wow, you know, I can conquer the world. But that very stuff that is circulating through my body, that's making me feel so amazing, wow, you know, it doesn't work forever.
Adrenaline is a powerful, powerful hormone, and you know, it's meant to be in short bursts. It's meant to keep you running away from the saber-toothed tiger. It's not meant to be all day, every day. And what tends to happen is, after a while, the adrenaline starts to run out, particularly for women, actually, because men tend to have they have a bit more of a balance from testosterone, and testosterone and adrenaline have similar effects. And so, you know, there's a lot of people that end up in adrenal fatigue, you know, that their adrenals just start to shut down. And I'm pretty sure that's what happened to me, which is what causes the sudden crash.
Yeah.
You know, where you just can't get out of bed, let alone perform.
Yes.
And that is quite a shock. So adrenaline is okay, but it's meant to be a temporary boost, and it's not meant to be relied upon as a constant, ever-present chronic stress signal.
Yes, yes. And I can relate to that, in that I have suffered adrenal burnout, and with that, my mood would drop really low, sometimes quite frighteningly low. So it is something to take very seriously.
Yes.
Patricia, could you teach us and demonstrate one or two techniques? And viewers, your privacy is protected, your camera is off, so you can you know, observe what Patricia's doing, and you can put it into practice right during this webinar, and nobody will see you. So I'm looking forward to this. Patricia, please go ahead and teach us something that we can do on our own when we're feeling triggered.
So there are many different techniques, obviously. What I was conscious of was choosing something that you can do, maybe if you are able to take yourself off to the bathroom or somewhere where you're not going to be observed, because some of this stuff does look a bit strange when you first come across it, all right, because you're working with the body and not with your thinking brain. But one of the first things to do is isolate what you're feeling in your body, and if you can, come into awareness. Okay, is there a tension or a tightness? Is there a signal? You know, is your heart racing? Is your stomach tight and held, clenched? Is there pain or tension around your shoulders or your neck? Wherever you're feeling something, to just turn your attention to that part of your body and just allow that. All right, that's the first thing. Is not, don't fight your body's signals, because that's what most of us do. And then taking a nice deep breath, and then just allowing that feeling to be there. Okay, and just listen in and tune in. And in a moment, what we're going to do is we're going to do something called havening, where we're going to talk to that part of your body. And I'm really aware that for many of you coming across some of this for the first time, you're going to be a little embarrassed, but as we've said, you're not on camera, so just try it and see what happens, because I guarantee something will. All right, and so then we just cross our arms over our shoulders like this, and we start to stroke down the arms, just gently, coming off and back. And then we're just going to say out loud, and you can do it after me, no one's checking, I'm here.
I'm here.
It's time.
It's time.
Time to let go.
Time to let go.
Of anything.
Of anything.
That no longer serves me.
That no longer serves me.
That my body is holding on to.
My body is holding on to.
I can do that now
I can do that now
because I am supported.
because I am supported.
I am loved.
I am loved.
And I am enough.
And I am enough.
I was always enough.
I was always enough.
But I just didn't know.
I just didn't know.
And then just say to yourself, all is well.
All is well.
And then you can take a nice deep breath. And just, again, tune in. All right, what's going on in your body? I've got tingles down the back of my neck and shoulders, so I must have been carrying quite a bit of tension there. My stomach has, because obviously I'm a little nervous, obviously, understandably, my stomach has unclenched slightly, just a little.
Yeah.
But everybody has a different response. And of course, the words that I was using there are not a script that's set in stone, but there are certain phrases that I use over and over again. I'm here brings you into relational context.
Yes.
I'm in the here and now, and I am witnessed.
Yes.
Is really important. So I'm here, I'm safe, and I'm enough, and I'm letting
Yes.
go. All right.
Yes.
These are always present tense.
Yes.
Because the unconscious brain has no sense of time, none whatsoever.
Yes.
Doesn't know if it was yesterday, 2 years ago, or 20 years ago. And so we always have to ground ourselves in the here and now and say, I'm letting go of anything that no longer serves me. And you can be more specific even. You can say this tightness in my gut, this pain in my neck, this headache, whatever it is you've got. And remarkably, often it melts away.
Yes.
Or it moves. Sometimes it can move somewhere
Yes.
or change in intensity. And I just
Thank
wonder
you.
what people experienced, if anything. We can get some feedback if anybody did find.
If anyone would like to put something in the chat, or if you would like to put on your camera and unmute, please feel free to do that.
Nobody's
Okay.
going to laugh.
Yeah, I know it's a big ask to, but know that you're free to do that if you want to raise your hand at any time before the session is over. That will be lovely, and I'll call on you to share.
I think
Patricia,
someone's writing. Yeah.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Patricia, you were talking about being witnessed.
Yes.
And you know, I found when I was doing the online sessions with you, these techniques worked so much more powerfully because I felt safe with you, even though we were at opposite ends of the world. I could still feel that connection. So what is it about being witnessed or feeling oneself being witnessed that is so good?
Yeah, that's a really good question. We are wired to connect. We're wired into personal connection via eye gaze, voice prosody, body language, which we're observing. We are wired via our mirror neurons to connect with others. Now, if that person is safe, we detect that, and our nervous system attunes to that person and sort of borrows it a little as a safe other. This is what happens when we're children, you know, when we're very young, when we're held, when somebody gazes at us with love and says, "You're beautiful," you know, you see a little baby's face light up when someone does that. But imagine if that doesn't happen reliably for whatever reason. That's memorized in the body. So what we're doing here is we are, I'm just looking at the chat. Yeah. We are mimicking what should have happened in attachment, early life attachment, with the eyes and ears of a safe other, you know, somebody who hears you without judgment and sees you without, you know, trying to dismiss you.
Yes.
Who holds you, actually.
Yeah.
That's what we're doing. And it
Yes.
works just as well online as it does
It does.
any other way, weirdly.
Yeah.
It's because we have visual connection, and you can hear my
Yes.
voice and I can hear yours.
Yes.
And somebody has asked, do I use tapping? Yes, I do. I use tapping, which is very similar, but it sort of uses tapping points on the head and neck.
Yes.
Very similar statements, but you might be more specific with that one. You might say, you know, this pain in my neck. It's
So
time
let's
to let it go.
Let's say I've been in court, and there's a 10-minute tea adjournment from 11 till 11:15, and the judge has been shouting at me and humiliating me.
Okay.
And I'm feeling really overwhelmed, you know, and completely thrown. And I remember that you have taught me these things, and I go off to the ladies' room and I go into the cubicle. What could you show me what I would do with tapping?
So it starts exactly the same. Find the pain or the sensation in your body that has come up from being shouted at or humiliated. If you're not sure where it is, you can just talk to the humiliation. All right, you can just say, this humiliation in my chest or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But you would do something like this. Let's say, this feeling, and you would say that out loud.
This feeling,
this tightness in my chest.
This tightness in my chest.
It's understandable.
It's understandable.
I feel humiliated.
I feel humiliated.
I feel judged.
I feel judged.
And that's an old feeling.
And that's an old feeling.
It's familiar.
It's familiar.
But I can let it go now.
But I can let it go now.
It's safe to let it go now.
It's safe to let it go now.
It's nothing to do with me.
It's nothing to do with me.
It's the judge having a bad day.
The judge having a bad day.
And I can let that go.
And I can let that go.
I can step out the way.
I can step out the way.
And love myself anyway.
And love myself anyway.
Isn't that beautiful? And then you just take a nice deep breath, and then you notice if there's any feedback from the body. Sometimes the body will go, oh, thank goodness, it's nothing to do with me. I can get out the way.
Yes.
All right. Sometimes it may have an argument. You know, if I'm being really provoking and I'm saying, you know, it's time to let go of this fear, for instance, and your body may say, no, I don't think it's safe to let go of this fear yet. And then you would tap a bit more and you would say, this remaining fear, it's
yes,
here for a reason.
Yes.
And I'm listening. But I'm asking to let go of anything that no longer serves me. And I trust my body can do that for me. You know, you're really having this dialogue.
Yes, yes. It's a communication,
It's a communication, and your body will start to respond, and it just gives you new information which you never had, and you can guarantee pretty much that you've never learned this in school.
Definitely.
You've never learned it in law school.
Never at law school.
No. You basically, few people understand that we're more than a brain, you know.
Yes.
We are mind and body, and the two communicate, and the separation has been foisted on us by a medical profession largely because it was easier to deal with just one, not both.
Yes, yes.
And so, you know, psychiatry took the mind and medicine took the body, but actually the two inform each other, literally inform each other.
Yes.
There's an information flow between these two parts of you that's what emotions are. They are a register, a real-time readout of what your body is sensing at any one time. They are not just a mental construct.
Yes.
So by doing this tapping, we
Yes.
are talking to both parts of you.
Yes.
And that's the power of this, because we get the thinking brain out the way and we talk directly to the back brain, which is communicating with the body. And so you can get rid of headaches, you can deal with chronic neck pain. You know, I had somebody yesterday with knee pain, and we just allowed her to put her hand on her knee, feel the problem, and then haven it.
Wow.
You know, I let go of anything that no longer serves me, and she was like, my sciatic pain's gone. I was like, yeah, because this is caused by tension in your body.
Yes.
And a lot of it is from past experience, not just what's going on in your current experience. So
thank
I
you,
know
Patricia. Terry, Terry, you can put on your camera, and after Terry, then I'm going to look at the chat and read the comments that people have made. Terry, would you like to switch on your camera?
Okay, just bear in mind I am. Oh, there we go. Tapping is something new to me. I've never seen it. I've never seen that before. Okay. What is the significance of the tapping? And the other question I have is, I saw you went in a bit of a roundabout way and then came back and did it again into service of like a routine.
Yes,
is there significance to the routine?
Yeah, there is. The first answer to your question is the vagus nerve. I talked about it going down from the back of your brain, but there's another branch. Your 10th cranial nerve is your upper ventral vagus, and it's all here. All the nerve endings are in your head, neck, and face, in your larynx, in your swallow reflex, in your middle ear, in your balance system. And so I think what we're doing here is we're literally stimulating nerve endings as we're tapping from the vagus nerve. And the vagus nerve is your social connection. It's your rest and digest. It says you're safe, you're here. The reason we do 2 rounds, as they're called, is really because you're disrupting the signal. And what you want to do is kind of respond to the initial feeling and kind of work that through until it feels more in balance. And so I don't know why we do 2. I'm sure it would work just as well with 3 or 5, but you usually need to do more than one sort of round, because you're working in an iterative way. You understand? You're trying to figure out, or not in your brain, but you're trying to feel what's going on in yourself. And so you need to kind of respond until it feels better. And so it's a cycle, if you like, of signals that give safety and calming to your system. It's nervous system regulation. This is what we're doing. All right. And it's so easy, but it's so profound that it should be taught in all schools, all prisons, probably all professions, to be honest.
I was just about to say that there should be a course at varsity that you do. You know, when you study law, you need to study something like this.
Nervous system regulation, because a lot of the clients you're dealing with are going to be dysregulated. You know, and actually probably you feel that when you go and work with them. You know, their nervous systems don't feel attuned. They feel angsty, upset, unsafe sometimes. Some of the clients, you know, certainly when I've worked with highly anxious people, I can feel that vibration. I literally can feel it emanating off them, even if they're not in the same room with me, because it's in the tightness of their voice. It's in the way they hold themselves. And so we're learning a new skill which seeks to ground ourselves in our own experience so that we're not so easily triggered by their dysregulation, which will be picked up vicariously. As I've said, you can pick up those signals, and it can actually send your heart into irregularity, because our heart, this is another area, but your heart is more than a pump. It's actually an electrical signaling kind of antenna, and we connect via the heart. There's a electromagnetic field, and so we can pick up other people's signals too. So I just think it's a really powerful technique, which we should all kind of explore. And someone has said in the chat, actually, there's some great tapping resources online. You know, the Altner, Nick and Jess, I think, are brother and sister, and they do a lot on tapping. And it's, You can tap for anxiety, you can tap for pain, you can tap for bad relationships, you can pretty much do everything, you know, because everything is emotional. Think about that. Everything you do is largely emotional. It's just our cognitive brains lie to us and tell us we're totally logical. Most decisions you make will be on the basis of emotions, and that will be coming from here.
Thank you. Very interesting.
Thank you.
You're
Thank you,
welcome.
Patricia.
You're very welcome.
Tessa made a comment. I don't know if you want to switch on, Tessa, if you feel comfortable. She wrote, I felt very emotional. This was now during the havening, and felt a release of tightness in my chest. That's really wonderful. Thanks for sharing that.
Thanks, Doris. Thanks, Patricia.
You're very welcome.
And, Rolf says he was not expecting this from the legal profession. Well, I don't blame you, Rolf. You know, I think I've really stuck my neck out by talking to my colleagues about things like this. But I think that every colleague of mine is as human as I am, you know, and it's I find it very meaningful to work with, to interact with my colleagues in an authentic way. I'm going to post here. These are Patricia's contact details. Patricia's website is called Alchemy Therapies, and this book by Patricia, I've put the link to Amazon, the Scar That Won't Heal. It's reading that book that sold me on contacting Patricia and working with her. It's an absolutely excellent book, and I highly recommend it. I'm going to put in my own website link. So if you go to my website, you'll see in the menu bar at the top, there's an item that says Get Support. If you are interested in having a support session, either privately or in a group with me, please contact me, and please feel free to contact me if you would like to have a free 15-minute phone call to see whether possibly we could work together. I also do joint sessions with the clinical psychologist Ruth Anser, who is known to many of you. She has presented webinars for the Serene Lawyer and also training sessions. So you could work with me or with Ruth or with both of us together. And we have found that there's quite a beautiful synergy when Ruth and I are in the room with one person, because she has the psychological knowledge and experience, and I have with more than 3 decades of experience in litigation. I have, you know, worked out certain strategies for how to deal with difficult situations. So working with the two of us has seemed to bring good results for people who've worked with us. So please do feel free to contact me. And I can highly recommend Patricia. Her therapy absolutely changed my life. And I just want to congratulate everyone for showing up today, because this is, as Rolf was pointed out, not something that we lawyers like to talk about. Emotions are messy. You can't define them. You can't put them in a box and label them, and they feel a bit unmanageable. So, you know, the people who've attended today, you are the trailblazers, and I just think that is absolutely fantastic. Terry is busy typing something.
Sorry, I just need to go, so I was just writing thank you.
Oh, okay.
You're welcome.
Would anyone else like to say something or ask something? If you would like to email me, please feel free to do that, and we can have a phone call. Maybe you'd like to meet me for a cup of coffee to see whether we could work together. Ruth and I offer the support sessions precisely because of what Patricia was talking about, the mirror neurons. You know, being in a room with someone who feels safe has always helped me, and I hope that possibly it could also be useful to you. Well, Patricia, any final comments?
Well, just really to encourage people to maybe open their mind a little, expand your mind. There's so much more to this world than just, getting through the day. We have the opportunity, I think, ahead of any other generation, of really investigating the depth of the human psyche and finding out these wonderful connections with our body. And there's such a wealth of information out there, but I hope I've managed to distill a little of what I've learned through my own journey, because boy, it hasn't been easy. And if I'd known then what I know now, I wouldn't have gone through what I went through for so many years. So, but thank you for the opportunity to share that. And
thank you, Patricia.
All right, take care, everyone.
There's just a last comment from Renette, which I think is worth reading out. Thank you. I'm interested in the book and we'll get it. I do believe that lawyers are healers. And Renette, I'm with you on that. Not many will agree with us, but I agree that we are there to help heal relationships and people in conflict. So thank you for that comment. I need to see one more comment from Tessa. We still have 3 minutes left. Thank you very much, Tessa. And I hope to see you all next month for our next webinar. And I will be posting the details on social media and also on our WhatsApp group, Wellbeing for Lawyers. Thank you, everyone. Goodbye.
Brilliant. Bye-bye.